Hey guys, Pro1701 here, and today we are going to be ranking my top 5 favorite Robert Holmes stories. And let me start off by saying this is a hard one because I love Robert Holmes. He's probably my favorite Doctor Who writer of all time, and I do think he's objectively probably the best Doctor Who writer of all time. Not a whole lot of bad ones in his catalog of Doctor Who stuff, either stuff he wrote or stuff that he heavily rewrote. And those will be in this list in this top 5. Stuff he wrote, and then when he was script editor, stuff he just pretty much heavily rewrote. There's so many good ones he did, it's really hard to narrow it down. Before I get started, I do want to go ahead and mention that if you have not subscribed already, go ahead and click that subscribe button. I do a new video every day. Click the bell for notifications. Click that like button as well. That looks good for the YouTube algorithm. Also, I have started a Patreon page if you would like to contribute to what I do, if you're a big Doctor Who fan and like to support fellow Doctor Who fans. I do have several different tiers, including an entry level that's just $2 a month. Right now, I'm opening up the polls and behind-the-scenes stuff to everybody temporarily. Normally, a lot of that stuff opens up at around the $10 level. I have a $2, $5, $10, $15, and $20 tier level. The Whitaker level, Colin Baker level, William Hartnell level, Matt Smith level, and Tom Baker level. But right now, even if you just join at the $2, you have access to polls, which I have one going right now that will run through May 15th, which is you get to pick which Doctor Who story I will be rewatching and reviewing next. And this one is purposely one that's either not well thought of by the fandom or one that I just personally don't care for. The options are between the Crotons, the Android Invasion, Arc and Infinity, Sleep No More, the Idiot's Lantern, and the God Complex. So if some of y'all really just want to torture me and make me either watch the Android Invasion or the God Complex again, here's your opportunity. It'll only cost you $2 a month. And then I also have been putting up some behind-the-scenes stuff. I have a behind-the-scenes video about my video making process and kind of how I come up with my videos and the process between conception and the videos being uploaded, kind of everything my process goes through. Also, whenever I have bloopers, I'll be putting bloopers up on my Patreon if you want to see some of the mistakes I made. I have one I did recently, which will be going up soon, about a minute long, where I just kind of, I don't know, my brain just kind of went in there, and I was just like, so I just started over. So there will be some of those coming as well. If you would like to, if you'd like to find out more, like I said, a link to my Patreon will be below. Give it a look if you have just a few seconds, see what you think. I am trying to do more with that. Anyway, all of that out of the way, now that I got my little spiel there out of the way, we're going to move on and talk about some Robert Holmes. Because if you're a classic Doctor Who fan, you gotta love some Bob Holmes. Bob is amazing. And right now we're going to look at my top 5 stories of his. And in 5th place is Spearhead from Space. Easily one of the best post-regeneration stories, especially objectively. This story has a lot to do. It has to introduce a new Doctor. It has to introduce a new villain. It has to basically introduce the unit family concept, even though we'd kind of seen that already with Invasion. Luckily, we do have the Brigadier and Benton coming back to kind of, so we have a couple familiar faces. It also has to introduce Liz as a new companion, and it has to get people used to the fact the show is in color, and it has to be a good story. It pulls off all of these things beautifully. The dialogue is so wonderfully written, just like Holmes always does. Holmes writes such good dialogue. The third Doctor is really, really good here. I love the third Doctor. John really hits the ground running pretty well. He's not sidelined for very long. I think he's really up and going, really by the end of the first episode or the beginning of the second episode. He's really already kind of going. I love that scene when he's talking about, are you looking for my pass? Well, I haven't got one. Well, don't just stand there, man. I love that. The Autons are such a fantastic villain. I don't think they've ever been in a bad story. They're utilized so seldomly that they've never had a chance to really have a bad story, which I like. They're always gold, and they're very, very phenomenal here. So Spearhead from Space is definitely one of the best post-regeneration stories, objectively and subjectively. In 4th place is The Brain of Morbius, which is one that was written originally by Terrence Dicks, and then which would involve a robot, I believe, but they couldn't realize it on the budget, and Dix was out of the country at the time and couldn't do rewrites. So Robert Holmes, as the script editor at the time, did a bunch of the rewrites, heavy rewrites, to the point to where when Terrence Dicks got found out about it when he got back, he was mad. And he basically told Robert Holmes, well, just put it under a Bland pseudonym, and they put it under the name Robert Bland. So this story is, as even Terrence Dicks has stated, more Holmes than Terrence Dicks. And I love the brain of Morbius. It's such a nice kind of Frankenstein concept. I find Morbius a fascinating villain. I actually have a list I did a while back, but it won't be airing for a while. It keeps getting pushed back. It's a 2-part list that actually involves where I talk about Morbius on it. I do like Morbius as a character. I'd love to see Morbius again. He's like an even more evil version of the Master, really. And you get the impression that this guy in his day was a huge threat to the galaxy and to the Time Lords, to the point to where they intervened just to do something about him and disperse him across the universe. So that's just fascinating. And the fact that even in his rundown condition, when he's in that makeshift body and that plastic head, when he goes toe-to-toe with the Doctor in that mind game, he wins. Because the Doctor gets knocked unconscious. He's out. And Morbius, while hurt and damaged, is still on his feet and moving. So I always say that Morbius won that mental battle in my mind. And plus, it's just a really good story. I like the acting in it. I like the idea of the women on Karn. I forget what they're called. Their little cult group. I like them, the Protectors of the Flame. Again, seeing them back in Night of the Doctor and in the modern series. They're really good in this one, and Sarah Jane's really good in this one. It's a really good story. I really enjoyed Brandon Morbius. Season 13 is just so phenomenal. Number 3 is The Talons of Wing Chiang. I've talked about this one recently when I ranked Season 14. This one was number 1. It's such a good story. The dialogue is so good here. I don't have any issues with this story. I know there's some people now, some younger people who might have a couple issues with the story. I do not. I have no problems with it. The story was made by the standards of 1977, and I judge it by that. Plus, the guy who plays Chang in it is very good in the role. He's very respectful. The way that role is written is very respectful. The way it is acted is very respectful. And I had never noticed, but somebody pointed this out in my Season 14 video in the comments. One of the guys pointed this out, that when Chang is on stage performing, he kind of talks more in that Fu Manchu speak. If I could have woman from the audience, But when he's off stage and when he's talking, he's much more articulate in his speech. He uses his English much more correctly. And I had never caught on to that before, that when he's on stage, he talks in a certain persona that was fitting for that time, in the Victorian period. But when he's off stage, he talks much more articulated. He's much more articulate in his speech, and he sounds much more intelligent. So I had never noticed just that little nuance that had escaped me, and I really liked that was pointed out to me, and I was able to notice that. Tom Baker is great in this. I love his Sherlock Holmes outfit. Leela is really good in this. Not many flaws with it. The rat looked kind of naffed, but I like the CGI rat, even though it's still not perfect. It looks a lot better in the box set. But the story is cracking. It's a great script. I really enjoy Talons, and it deserves its place as, in Doctor Who lore. Number 2 is The Pyramid of Mars, which is also one that was heavily rewritten. I think the original writer was a guy named Lewis, and but the script was deemed unusable. So Robert Holmes does what Robert Holmes does, and he pretty much just rewrote the whole thing. And Pyramids of Mars is amazing. Again, season 13 is just so good. The only thing looking a bit naffed in it's the mummies to me. The mummies, they look like robots. That's what they look like. They look like bandaged up robots. Other than that, the story's great. Sutekh is a great villain. I love just how dangerous, dangerous and deadly he is. And I like how he speaks with that soft voice. He doesn't have like that loud, booming Omega voice. He has that very quiet, soft, just almost a whisper voice, and it's so deadly and eerie. And you realize that the Doctor's just basically an ant compared to this guy, and that's exactly how he sees the Doctor, as an ant. And it's only the fact he finds the Doctor so insignificant that the Doctor is able to win at the end of the day, because Sutekh gets overconfident and releases him from his powers. So Sutek is a strong villain. He didn't give the Doctor enough credit. That scene when the Doctor takes Sarah to the future and it sees the decimated Earth and what Earth could look like if Sutek got loose. Oh, that's such a wonderfully done scene. It's such a good story. Such a good story. I like when the one guy walks out from the portal and puts his hand on the other guy's shoulder and the smoke comes up and he just kills him. It's, ooh, Robert Holmes, man. And then number 1 is The Ark in Space, which is also one that's heavily rewritten. I believe the guy who wrote that's name is John. And again, it was deemed unusual. I keep saying unusual. It was deemed unusable. And so Robert Holmes did what Robert Holmes does, and he just pretty much rewrote the whole thing. And I love The Ark in Space. It's one of the 2 stories I have the earliest memory of, the other being Inferno. I just remember them as a kid. They really stick in my mind. Ark in Space was the very first Doctor Who story I ever bought and owned. I bought that on DVD back in the early to mid 2000s. Was so happy to find it. I have such good memories of it. The idea of, kind of like The Fly, I like the idea of it doesn't just physically transform you, but mentally it's changing you too. And you see Noah and he's so confused at points, fighting not just physically but fighting mentally with himself. Kind of like in The Fly when Seth Brundle's not just changing physically, but mentally you can tell he's being affected by the way he acts. I love that. I love the fact it's also a mental transformation. I think Nervous Station is a pretty nice looking set for Classic Who. Tom has his speech about how indomitable humans are, one of his best speeches. I love how he motivates Sarah Jane to get through the shaft is quite amusing to me. And even the effects of the Weirin look alright. I mean, they look a little dated, of course. It's bubble wrap, we know. But I'm able to ignore that. I do wish they'd update the special effects on the shuttles. I know they have updated them with CGI, but those CGI updates look really old now. So I'd like them perhaps updated a little more. But yeah, The Ark in Space is just another cracking good story. It's one of those, when I meet modern Who fans who haven't seen Classic Who, that's one of the ones I point to and say, go watch The Ark in Space. It's considered one of Doctor Who's best stories for a reason. It deserves all of the stuff it's given, all of the accolades it's been given. It's just a really, really cracking story, really good dialogue, really good script, and always a fun rewatch for me. So those are my top 5 Robert Holmes stories. Yes, I would love to do a video ranking all of them, but I'm going to be honest, it's so hard to rank all of them because so many of them are good. There's very few duds in the Robert Holmes era, or the Robert Holmes, his stories, I should say, because he's such a good Doctor Who writer. He's probably the best Doctor Who writer, I think. So yeah, so comment down below, let me know what you think of my list and what you think of Robert Holmes, and let me know what your top 5 favorite Robert Holmes stories are and why you feel the way you do about those stories. And if any of the ones I've named you personally don't care for or think are overrated, let me know that as well. I always enjoy interacting with you guys, so you do like I said before, click the like button, the subscribe button, the bell for notifications, check out that Patreon page if there's anything there that interests you. Most importantly though, stay safe out there, and thank you for watching.